Hi, good morning. Thanks for joining us for some coffee and some People Talks. Although our Ash doesn't drink coffee, so I don't know what you're drinking, girl. But I'll let you do the intro. But you have a fun announcement about what today is. Do you want to share with everybody what today is?
I sure do. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be sharing a TED Talks with you guys today. And I don't know if any of you guys know who Simon Sinek is, but I personally follow him. I love listening to his talks, and we are listening to him today. His talk is going to be on how great leaders inspire action. So I hope you guys enjoy this video and tune in afterwards. We will have a live discussion with Sarah and myself.
Enjoy. Are you going to be wearing a red nose?
I might be putting on my red nose because it is a National Red Nose Day.
Nice.
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition, and yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight, and the Wright brothers beat them to it? There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery, and this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You ready to buy a computer from me? All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products, and nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The goal is not to do business with everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. Here's the best part. None of what I'm telling you is my opinion. It's all grounded in the tenets of biology, not psychology, biology. If you look at a cross-section of the human brain looking from the top down, what you see is the human brain is actually broken into three major components that correlate perfectly with the golden circle. Our newest brain, our Homo sapien brain, our neocortex, corresponds with the what level. The neocortex is responsible for all of our rational and analytical thought and language. The middle two sections make up our limbic brains, and our limbic brains are responsible for all of our feelings, like trust and loyalty. It's also responsible for all human behavior, all decision-making, and it has no capacity for language. In other words, when we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. Sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and your figures, and they say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right. Because the part of the brain that controls decision-making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart, or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision-making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal and want to be a part of what it is that you do? Again, the goal is not just to sell people who need what you have. The goal is to sell to people who believe what you believe. The goal is not just to hire people who need a job. It's to hire people who believe what you believe. I always say that, there's if you hire people just because they can do a job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they work for you with blood and sweat and tears. And nowhere else is there a better example of this than with the Wright brothers. Most people don't know about Samuel Pierpont Langley. And back in the early 20th century, the pursuit of powered man flight was like the dot-com of the day. Everybody was trying it. And Samuel Pierpont Langley had what we assume to be the recipe for success. I mean, even now, you ask people, why did your product or why did your company fail? And people always give you the same permutation of the same three things. Undercapitalized, the wrong people, bad market conditions. It's always the same three things. So let's explore that. Samuel Pierpont Langley was given $50,000 by the War Department to figure out this flying machine. Money was no problem. He held a seat at Harvard and worked at the Smithsonian and was extremely well connected. He knew all the big minds of the day. He hired the best minds money could find, and the market conditions were fantastic. The New York Times followed him around everywhere, and everyone was rooting for Langley. And how come we've never heard of Samuel Pierpont Langley? A few hundred miles away in Dayton, Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright. They had none of what we consider to be the recipe for success. They had no money. They paid for their dream with the proceeds from their bicycle shop. Not a single person on the Wright brothers' team had a college education, not even Orville or Wilbur. And the New York Times followed them around nowhere. The difference was Orville and Wilbur were driven by a cause, by a purpose, by a belief. They believed that if they could figure out this flying machine, it'll change the course of the world. Samuel Pierpont Langley was different. He wanted to be rich, and he wanted to be famous. He was in pursuit of the result. He was in pursuit of the riches. And lo and behold, look what happened. The people who believed in the Wright brothers' dream worked with them with blood and sweat and tears. The others just worked for the paycheck. And they tell stories of how every time the Wright brothers went out, they would have to take 5 sets of parts because that's how many times they would crash before they came in for supper. And eventually, on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers took flight. And no one was there to even experience it. We found out about it a few days later. And further proof that Langley was motivated by the wrong thing, the day the Wright brothers took flight, he quit. He could have said, that's an amazing discovery, guys. Now we'll improve upon your technology. But he didn't. He wasn't first. He didn't get rich. He didn't get famous. So he quit. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And if you talk about what you believe, you will attract those who believe what you believe. Well, why is it important to attract those who believe what you believe? Something called the law of diffusion of innovation. And if you don't know the law, you definitely know the terminology. The first 2.5% of our population are our innovators. The next 13.5% of our population are our early adopters. The next 34% are your early majority, your late majority, and your laggards. The only reason these people buy touch-tone phones is because you can't buy rotary phones anymore. We all sit at various places at various times on the scale, but what the law of diffusion of innovation tells us is that if you want mass market success or mass market acceptance of an idea, you cannot have it until you achieve this tipping point between 15 and 18% market penetration, and then the system tips. And I love asking businesses, what's your conversion on new business? And they love to tell you, oh, it's about 10%, proudly. Well, you can trip over 10% of the customers. We all have about 10% who just get it. That's how we describe them, right? That's like that gut feeling, oh, they just get it. The problem is, how do you find the ones that just get it before you're doing business with them versus the ones who don't get it? So it's this here, this little gap, that you have to close, as Jeffrey Moore calls it, crossing the chasm. Because you see, the early majority will not try something until someone else has tried it first. And these guys, the innovators and the early adopters, they're comfortable making those gut decisions. They're more comfortable making those intuitive decisions that are driven by what they believe about the world and not just what product is available. These are the people who stood online for 6 hours to buy an iPhone when they first came out, when you could have just walked into the store the next week and bought one off the shelf. These are the people who spent $40,000 on flat-screen TVs when they first came out, even though the technology was substandard. And by the way, they didn't do it because the technology was so great. They did it for themselves. It's because they wanted to be first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. In fact, people will do the things that prove what they believe. The reason that person bought the iPhone in the first 6 hours, or stood in line for 6 hours, was because of what they believed about the world and how they wanted everybody to see them. They were first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So let me give you a famous example, a famous failure and a famous success of the law of diffusion of innovation. First, the famous failure. It's a commercial example. As we said before a second ago, the recipe for success is money and the right people and the right marketing conditions, right? You should have success then. Look at TiVo. From the time TiVo came out about 8 or 9 years ago to this current day, they are the single highest quality product on the market. Hands down, there is no dispute. They were extremely well funded. Market conditions were fantastic. I mean, we use TiVo as a verb. I TiVo stuff on my piece of junk Time Warner DVR all the time. But TiVo is a commercial failure. They've never made money. And when they went IPO, their stock was at about $30 or $40 and then plummeted, and it's never traded above 10. In fact, I don't think it's even traded above 6, except for a couple of little spikes. Because you see, when TiVo launched their product, they told us all what they had. They said, we have a product that pauses live TV, skips commercials, rewinds live TV, and memorizes your viewing habits without you even asking. And the cynical majority said, we don't believe you. We don't need it. We don't like it. You're scaring us. What if they had said, if you're the kind of person who likes to have total control over every aspect of your life, boy, do we have a product for you. It pauses live TV, skips commercials, memorizes your viewing habits, etc., etc. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And
"24, you cannot dance in the rising star."
Well, we lost a little bit of our last feed there with Simon, but he actually wraps it up pretty quick, and you can go on and see the whole thing if you want to rewatch it. Ash, great nose there. Love the red nose day. It even has little eyes on it. I don't have my glasses on, so I'm going with
Yeah, you see?
very cute.
Look how cute she is. Ooh, there you
Very
go.
cute.
Ooh, makes my nose.
Very fun.
But yes, it's National Red Nose Day, so what more should I should wear it, except for I can't really breathe and talk with it on.
You have to become a mouth breather. I have to put my glasses on so I can see my notes, because as my advanced age keeps coming on, as everybody who's watching kind of knows how that creeps in. So, I think Simon is an interesting cat from my perspective. And sometimes he puts something and I say, oh, that's so enlightening and wonderful. And other times I'm like, yeah, that's pretty obvious. Thanks. And then I go, understanding theory and logic and what things should be, and understanding the practical application side, I sometimes say those are a disconnect, right? If everyone could be a good leader, everyone would, right? Everyone would follow someone. We'd all agree on the same thing. And there would not be 5,000 books on how to be a leader, on leadership development, on developing leaders, on all of those pieces of it. So I think this was interesting because he actually gave some concrete examples, at least in his side, as far as not necessarily leaders as individuals, but what he talked a lot about was leaders as company leaders. Does that make sense? And so I think one of the things that I want to take it down from Apple and some of the, TiVo and the groups he described, because for us, we're not these big corporations out there that are being leaders and disruptors in the industries, right? But we're employees, we're people, we're community members. And so one of the things that I always thought was interesting, and it came to me when he was talking, is your vibe attracts your tribe. And isn't that kind of the fun way to say what he was saying? What do you think about that, Ash? I mean, in your experience, do you believe that your vibe attracts your tribe?
I actually do believe that it's the law of attraction. It's the energy you put off. You people either get a good energy and want to be around you, or they get a bad energy and they don't want to be around you. So people are drawn to people that are outgoing and positive, that are leaders, that have drive and ambition. And so a lot of people, if they don't currently have that in their lifestyle right now, they're drawn to that because they're like, ooh, I want what they have. So I do. And it always says if there's a toxic relationship or negative person, take them out and get them out of your inner circle, because you have your inner circle and then you have your outer circle. So yes, I do agree with that comment, but I do want to make note, and he repeated it several times during the video, and I'm not sure if you all caught that, but I will repeat it to you guys. He kept saying, people buy why we do it, not what we do. He kept repeating that. And then also he repeated it a couple times is hire people who believe what you believe as well. And so those two comments did stand out to me. And the goal is to do business with the people who believe what you believe. And I agree with all those comments.
That's been done though, right? So thanks, Simon, for one more thing that sounds great in theory, but practically, right, doesn't always work. And here's my conversation starter for this group and for people who want to call in and ask questions or make comments. But here's the issue. So when we talk about your why, right, and if you have a why, then it should affect what you do, how you do it, all of those things, right? If you have your why. But lately, I've been thinking a little bit about what I heard someone else say, and that is that a lot of times in our world, our feelings, right? And everyone knows how I feel about feelings because they're very fleeting, so we should not always trust them. But our feelings actually cause us to have action or behavior, right? I feel a certain way, so because of those feelings, I'm going to act out on those feelings or through those feelings, and then the end result of that is my identity or my reputation. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Right? So I'm angry one day or I'm mad about something. So I'm mad at you and I come to the office and I'm like, and I let you know how angry I am at you, right? I acted on those feelings. And then someone watched me behave that way, right? And now that's my reputation. That's my identity. Where I want to challenge it a little bit, and I want to say, what if we did the opposite? What if we discovered what our identity was and our reputation was, and we can make that be our why, okay? And that made us behave a certain way, actions, right? So if my identity is to be a good leader, my identity or my why is the passion for what I do and everything I do it, then that means my actions should follow that. And if my actions follow that, then the last thing that happens are feelings about it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not controlled and driven by my feelings, but I'm controlled and driven by a purpose, my why, right? That then cause action and feelings. So what do you think of that little Simon Sinek mixed up there?
I love that idea. I like to, change things up. which I do agree with you on all of those. It really does start with your why and your purpose that leads to action. And I just want to remind the audience that this is an interaction live talk. So if you guys have any comments, questions, or anything, we do have Sarah Marie behind the scenes doing all of our audio. And I do apologize for the technical difficulties we had. It happens. So please, if you have a comment, question, or something, Sarah will feed that to us. And we would love for you guys to interact and maybe kind of give us your thoughts about this TED Talk video, what you think of it.
So what do you think when he said about, while we're waiting for Sarah Marie, what do you think when he said about the TiVo comment? Because one of the things that stood out to me was I'm very skeptical, right? So when anybody comes on and a product is amazing, my first thought is it really, right? And so I never kind of go for that. I'm always the one that when American Idol was really big, or now what's the other singing one, I won't watch it, right? Because I don't want to follow the group. I want to be out on my own. But when he made the comment about TiVo, he said, how would you have looked at it if they would have made the comment, do you want total control? And I thought, yes, you. That would have actually spoke to me. And I thought that was really interesting, because I wonder if part of it too is if the majority of Americans are standing in line for the Apple phone when they could have just waited a week, right? Then marketing folks know that, and they're marketing to that. They're not marketing to maybe their why, right? And their purpose, because they want to sell product. And that's very interesting. What we do is, we wouldn't do what we do without a purpose. It just wouldn't happen. We're too, the work is too hard, right? If you don't have a purpose or a belief or that drive, you just wouldn't do it. It'd be easier to go, run a Starbucks. Everybody loves coffee, right? I can make everybody happy with coffee. I can't make everybody happy with healthcare. So I think that was really interesting from the standpoint of, do we sometimes as leaders say what people want to hear, right? Do we market a certain project or a certain initiative by saying what we want to hear for the buy-in, or do we really speak to the why and the purpose behind it? Because that's a lot harder, don't you think?
Yeah. I know this is kind of off topic, but since we are talking about purpose, I thought this would be a really good time to share. This right here happens to be my purpose that I created back in 2015. And I'll just kind of share with you guys what it says. And it says, my purpose in life is to be the greatest role model to others and be able to touch so many lives in so many ways, and to always keep giving and giving. And of course, I signed it. So that is my purpose. I see it every single day. It's behind me. I shared it with you guys. And I truly feel that I am living that purpose. And I'm so grateful that I was able to discover that back in 2015. So I encourage you guys to take the time, find out what your why is, what's your purpose in life, and go for it. Have that drive, that feeling inside that you want to push for that, which is so exciting.
Sometimes it looks different, right? In 2015, when you wrote it, sometimes it looks different, right? In 2015, when you wrote it, you probably had an idea of what that looked like as far as being a mentor or a coach or an inspiration, right? And giving back. What does that look like, right? There's so many different ways to give back. Is it tangibly do we give back, right? Is it monetarily? Is it in actions? Is it in thoughts and energy? That's really one of those things. You have to find your piece, and it changes over time. I think some people have funds that they can give back and be very philanthropic, and other people don't have extra income, and so maybe they do acts of service. They help someone paint a house or repair a fence, or help someone go grocery shopping. But all of those things are ways that we can be leaders and affect change and obviously our why in our community, right?
Yeah. And I will tell you, when that one, it was the first thing that came into my head when I was doing an experiment at a leadership group event. And I wrote it down and I was like, okay, I don't understand this. I don't know why this came to my head. and I didn't have to have a meaning at that point. It's just the only thing that they said, come up with something, write it down. And that was the first thing that came to me. But then I didn't discover that until later in the year, in November of 2015, that I was actually living my purpose because of life-changing experiences that I personally went through, is when that was an aha moment, like, oh my gosh.
Don't you love those moments, right? That just kind of make you, so do you think 2015, it's 2019, 4 years later, is it time for a revision of what's on your wall? Maybe to change it up a little bit, make it more specific, add things to it. I know, Sarah Marie, if you're on, I don't know if you're on mute or not, or if you can talk, but Sarah Marie does things similar. You call it your, and I won't tease, but what do you call it, your board?
My board? Which board?
Yeah, your purpose board, or but you have like pictures, like Ash has her letter.
Right.
Vision board.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, so Sarah Marie has her vision board where it's very visual, right? Ash has a contract more so. And I think those are all interesting, concepts. I started a company out of trying to be empowering and giving back and doing all those things that remind me every day of what my purpose is, right? But my purpose changes a little bit based upon who comes in front of me, who I interact with, who I touch, right? So I think that the underlying purpose is always the same, and there's always threads that go through it. But I certainly hope I'm not the same person I was yesterday, right? I hope I'm not the same person I am today, tomorrow, and that I have that experience. So, Sarah Marie, how often do you update your vision board?
Oh gosh, I actually update it annually. Because you're right, it does change, things evolve. I remember, I had a picture of the car that I wanted for a really long time. And then when it was time to buy that car, I was like, you know what? That doesn't really suit me anymore. And so I bought a different one that I really enjoyed. I also have a mission statement. Mine is to empower women to live a life of abundance. So that's kind of like my, like my statement, and then everything kind of grows around that too. But even now, I mean, that I wrote that probably back about when you did Ash, but and even now I've added in joy and impact in that too, because that certainly makes a difference. I think as you grow and evolve, is that not only what you like and what you're interested in, but also what you're passionate about. Maybe it's life experiences, maybe it's something that happens in the community, maybe it's your own personal journey. I know that Ashley, you have a big story around that affected you, and you're like, wow, like I really feel differently about this topic now, or about my mission and purpose in the world. So I do think it is good to revisit and review. And I know that even, as a companies do that all the time too, because their, vision changes. So.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, Sarah, because in our NEO process, our new employee orientation process, for part of the company, I lead the beginning of it, so the first half day. And we spend a lot of time talking about characteristics and values and culture and mission and vision and our tagline and why. I mean, to the point of why did we choose this specific word, right? And we talk about it being semantics, or we say the English language is so amazing because, I can say, and women, we do this all the time, right? How are you? Fine. Ooh, okay, fine means one thing to someone else, and fine in a certain tone means something to someone else, right? Everyone knows me. I don't ever yell. When I get upset, I get more quiet, and don't even open my mouth when I talk. So I'm not a yeller, but my word choices change, right? My eyes change, my body language changes. And I still go back to that whole piece of, if you know your identity and your purpose or your reputation, what you want it to be, your actions should follow that. And then your feelings should come in later, because feelings come and go. And we don't ignore our feelings, right? We have to identify and listen to them. And I'm not saying just, press them down. But I am saying that I think a lot of times when we think of some of these things, like what our purpose and our mission is, it changes with our age because our priorities change, right? Our experiences change. And I think that makes a big difference. We had a conversation with someone the other day, and they said, millennials, the only thing that they want to focus on is having a purpose or a reason for why they do everything. And I don't know that that's just millennials. I think millennials get a bad rap, right? I really do. And I think Generation X gets a bad rap, and I think baby boomer. I don't think that I think our experiences, right, what we're exposed to in our culture, social media, some of the things that we can now just get like this, right, compared to, I remember dial-up. That tells you how old I am when you hear that screeching noise while you were waiting for your internet to kick in. But overall, right, we all want to feel a purpose to a certain extent. We all want to feel fulfilled. So I don't think the millennials have the market on that. But I made the comment in a group discussion of, well, what about when I have to clean my house? There is a purpose in that, right? I need a clean house. There's hygiene stuff. Everyone knows my issue about cleanliness. So there is a purpose in it. But do I really feel like that's my purpose in life? No, right? Not really. So aren't there some things that we just have to do? And then how do we find our purpose then? So I'll put that out to you, Asha. When it's something that we just have to do, how do we find our purpose, and how do we do that with the same integrity and intention and witness that we do in things that actually are meaningful?
That's a good question. It's making me think.
Simon Sinek when we need him, right? He's not here to answer them.
And you know, I honestly, I don't know if I can really answer that, and that's going to be different for everybody. But I do agree there's things that we have to do, and that's really not our purpose. But I think as you go along in life, just things will just happen to you, and that you'll be drawn to finding your purpose. I don't know if that even makes sense, and or I might be just rambling as well because I'm trying to come up with.
It does. I think I'm going back to my point of, if you have an identity, right? Yeah. And then your actions do that, and then your feelings come in. I don't have to feel like I need to clean the house, right? I know that's a simple thing. Or maybe in all of our work, like, I mean, we know me, I have to review contracts, and I have paperwork I don't always love, right? I like people, I like experiences, I like bringing help, I like doing those things, but paperwork's a natural part of my job that I don't love. I don't love all the meetings. I don't always love traveling, but it's part of it. And so if I went by only my why, right, on some of these other tasks, and I don't see it as a big picture part, I think that's where character comes in, right? Doing things when nobody's looking, having the same intentionality. That's really where I struggle sometimes with that. We make people feel like there has to be a why behind everything. And sometimes the why is stronger, right? Because it's passion, isn't it? And I don't necessarily feel as passionate about cleaning my house as I do about helping people get care, as I do about, changing the landscape of Colorado. So I think that while I love this, I also look at it from a standpoint of, how do we bring this down to people who maybe have, disabilities, or as Michael Kutcher taught me, diffabilities, or illnesses, or things that their life is controlled by their four walls, right? And where do they find their why? And I think, to me, the whole point of our company and what we believe in is everybody has a why. Everybody has an ability to impact other people, whether you are confined to a wheelchair, your home, a disease process. It doesn't define you, right? And so you can be inspirational. You can affect other people. You can be motivating. And I mean, the people that I think have motivated me over the last few years are, no offense, Simon, not Simon, right? Not anyone in our political landscape. No offense, all of you politicians. Not anybody in Hollywood, right? Like, to me, it's the people that day to day gut it out and still have a positive attitude, still are kind, still say, I hope you have a great day, even though they know I'm leaving the house and they can't, right? Or, I make a stupid comment about, I'm going to go run an errand, and, I'm talking to someone who's in a wheelchair, and I go, oh, why did I say that? That was so insensitive. And yet they don't take it that way, right? Because they know my heart, and that's not that way. But I think that's really where I go, okay, Simon, how do you do that on a day-to-day basis when you're not Apple, and you're not TiVo, and you're not Fuji, and some of these other, huge companies that have been disruptors? So you're out in the field all the time. Ash, what's your opinion on that?
On which part?
Well, so how people can make effect that otherwise are not necessarily in the spotlight, right? They're confined to their home through an illness or a disease or a disability versus, they're out in the limelight, like a politician, someone in social media, or, Simon for that matter, who's an influencer. What about someone who's just every day just gutting it out to do life? How did they find this why and be an inspiration and a leader to others?
I think they probably would find their why. With your why, you have to dig really deep to find out what your why is, but it has to be meaningful. It has to be your, personally to you, not to everybody else. And so I think their interaction every day with life struggles probably will help them find out their why, the events and activities that they possibly do. I'm not sure. That's really a good question. But everybody's different. Everybody has different meanings and whys to them. I don't know. You put me on the spot again.
But that's what makes it fun, right? Because we don't have all the answers. That's the whole piece, right? We're bringing material to all you guys, and really, what I am excited about doing is getting you to think. Because Ash and I don't have the answers. Sarah Marie doesn't have the answers. We're bringing topics, and then the whole point of it is to get conversation going, to get dialogue, and to have you guys lead this every month and say, wow, that's some really good food for thought. Do I need to up my value statement or my mission statement as a person, or my vision board, or how am I really impacting? Am I saying I'm doing all these things, but I'm really not? Or, to go deeper, but I don't think we have time to do that. Intentionality is my favorite word, right? Intentional. We can be, and I think everybody that I'm working with know, I'm doing this gratitude thing and this intentional kindness exercise for several weeks. And part of it is whatever your normal kindness is doesn't count. It has to be intentional. It has to stretch you. It has to make you uncomfortable to a certain extent, because otherwise, are we really doing anything outside our norm, right? And when you wrote your statement, and Sarah Marie, I'm sure when you did your vision board, it wasn't things that were right here that we could touch, right? It was things that you had to work at to get. And maybe some things on that vision board stayed for years until you realized, like Sarah Marie, that car, that's not really what you wanted.
Right.
It may have been at the time, and if you would have gotten it, you probably, right? But I don't know, maybe it would have lost its luster. And because of the fact that we had to work so hard, when it did come time to do something, maybe our priorities adjusted, maybe our why adjusted, right? As we gain some age and wisdom, that we realize monetary things aren't as exciting as they seem.
I do want to check in. Sarah Marie, has anybody made any comments or any questions that we needed to answer? Because I know we need to wrap this up, but I want to make sure we got those comments answered.
No comments or questions. However, we did have a request that you share a picture of your statement or purpose up there. So perhaps you can take a photo of it and we'll post it on our page.
Okay.
All over the place, girl.
Yeah.
Well, perfect. Well, we will wrap things up, but I just do want to put out a quick reminder that we would love for you guys to tune in with us live again next month on June 27th. We will be sharing another video with you guys. And that topic is going to be how to teach kids to talk about taboo subjects. And that is by Liz Kleinrock. I probably pronounced her last name incorrectly, and I do apologize for that. But please tune in with us next month on June 27th at 10 a.m. again. Any final thoughts, Sarah, that you have for the group?
No, I just think that, which Sarah? Sorry, we have Sarah Marie and Sarah. Sarah Marie, you go first.
Sarah E.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I think you can actually find purpose in anything in anything that you do. Like you were saying, Sarah, cleaning the house. I think you can find purpose in that. You clean the house because you value cleanliness. If you're caring for somebody and maybe you're doing mundane tasks that seem purposeless, find the purpose within it, because there's always a greater purpose, and there's always someone else that you can impact, even by those small things.
Absolutely. And I would just tag on what Sarah Marie said and say that, again, we don't always feel like maybe we have our purpose that day or our why, but how we do things, the intentionality, the kindness, the delivery, the character in what we do in those tasks that may seem tiresome and routine, they're not someone. And especially in caregiving, especially in what we do in healthcare, you may be cleaning out the refrigerator for the 15th time. You may be helping someone shower. You may be helping someone get dressed. And it may seem like, yeah, every day you're helping someone get dressed the same way. Every day you're helping someone get their medication. But to those people, it is not mundane, and it is not nothing. And there is a huge why behind it. So I still go back to, when you can't find your why or your feelings, always remember your identity. Always remember who you are, who you want to be. Have your actions, then follow that, and the feeling will eventually come. But we don't always wake up with this, Captain Jack Sparrow attitude, right? Of wanting to take on the world and seize the day. And yet we have other people counting on us. And so that's where I go back to intentionality, to character. And we have to find that, because that's what we do. That's who we are. That's our identity.
And I do want to leave with one quote for you guys. The quote that I have to share with you guys is, "We follow those who lead, not for them, but for ourselves, that start with the why. The ability to inspire others or find others that inspire them." So think about that last quote, and thank you guys so much for joining myself and the two Sarahs today. I appreciate it, and hopefully you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys next month.
See ya.